Hey, welcome to Caching in the Northwest. You know, this is the podcast from the birthplace of geocaching right here in the great Pacific Northwest. Now, it's Thursday at 9 p.m. Pacific, and they call me Chris of the Northwest. And we're going to talk about geocaches and geocachers from here and all around the world. So while you're shopping air conditioners on Prime Day, we'll be caching in the Northwest.
Oh, yeah, we're having a heat wave for sure.
Can you sing a song about it?
No, I can't, but somebody can.
Tropical heat wave?
Yeah. There's no surprising. The temperature's rising. Something about a can. I don't know. But
there was a band called Heatwave.
Oh.
I am not surprised. Well, audio listeners are surprised that that's a different voice than Land Monkey, because tonight we're chatting about caching New Mexico with guest friend and patron supporter CRS98. So welcome to the chat, to the show.
Thank you.
Live audience, you know what to do. CRS98's not in the chat tonight. Well, he is, but he's also right here live and in person in video form. So
just typing words.
Yeah. So maybe you've got questions for Cliff. We'll see. Share your thoughts. We want to hear from you. But first, well, he's already here, but it's time to bring in our New Mexican nomad. Some say he once tried to dig a hole, and others say he collects shipping boxes. All we know is he's called CRS98.
You have no idea how many shipping boxes are out in the garage. It's just astounding, a stacking number. So,
actually, I've been collecting shipping boxes lately. We're redoing our kitchen, and we haven't gotten to the point where we need to empty the cabinets yet, but we're getting there. And so the garage is uncomfortably full of boxes.
See that over there, that was our kitchen remodel last year. So it's all good. It will work out.
How is it when it's all done?
It's really quite nice, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. We're not going to do the video tour tonight, though. So
okay. Hey, but a quick reminder that we appreciate the support of our patrons who keep this podcast coming each and every week. And thanks to Landsharks, let me go up and talk to you about Landsharks. They're one of our corporate Denali level sponsors. You can check out everything they have to offer at landsharks.ca. That's Landsharks with a Z because, they're Canadian. And we also have another corporate Denali level sponsor, and that is Gold Country Geotourism. Right now is the perfect time. Well, maybe not during the podcast. Or, you know what? Download the podcast, listen to it while you're driving to or through Gold Country. You can also go to exploregoldcountry.com to learn more about the Geotour tours. There's 2 now, and the region. There's more like 5 because the main Geotour is just huge. And then they added on a prequel. But while you're going there, don't forget to download the app. It's full of useful information. You can go to facebook.com/exploregoldcountry to find out more. And if you want to know more about supporting the show, maybe you do, maybe you don't. It's okay. Go click the Patreon link on the cachingnw.com website. Oh, how'd you do that? Hey, how come mine didn't turn off? Okay.
It's the bad breath.
Oh, that was nice. You just blew the logo away. Huh. Hey,
what?
It's time for a glow. And, some have asked, what is a glow?
What is a glow?
Thank you. Hey. Cliff, I like you. Can you come on each and every week?
New voice tonight. That's awesome.
Probably not every week, but, every now and again. So.
It's not easy getting here each and every week. Let me tell you.
I can believe that.
But thank you for asking. The glow is the geocaching log of the week. So whether you read it or whether you wrote it, we want to hear about it because great logs simply make geocaching better. Send an email or a recording on your fancy phone to feedback@cachingnw.com. You can call in to 253-693-TFTC and show us just how you glow.
All right. Well, this week's glow was sent in via email, and it was sent from CRS98.
Hey,
There's a theme.
it's a
How about
coincidence. Do you
It's,
believe in coincidences?
that? Yeah, I do.
I don't.
So this is called Goldilocks 513. Goldilocks 513 found a cache called "Been There, Done That, Got 50 T-Shirts Challenge." It's GC4 Quebec Yankee Whiskey November, and it's quite the glow. Cliff, do you want to read it yourself since you sent it in?
I will. Found on my wedding day! Exclamation point, Shamrock. That's all there is to it.
There you
That's
go.
the entire glow. Now, I brought this one out not only because CRS98 sent it in, but it's to point out that glows don't have to be long and complicated. You know what? This one had to be incredibly memorable, right? Found on their wedding day. Wow. That's fantastic. Now, who's to say they didn't actually get married right there on the spot? We don't know.
It's possible.
Yeah.
And if you want to know more coinky dink stuff here, Goldilocks 513. My wedding anniversary is 513.
Does your wife have a caching name of Goldilocks?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Wouldn't it be ironic if that was your wife's cache?
It would really be something if she found that cache on our wedding day too. Since it was a long time before geocaching was the thing.
So the reason I know about it, of course, is this is my cache. And I can tell you that I really hope that they didn't get married there, because while it is in a park, it is really right on the edge of the North Seattle transfer station. So it's not really the place I would pick to get married. So.
Well, okay, there's nothing wrong with that, though. But nice. I don't know if I would find a cache on my wedding day. Okay, I got married well before caching, but
I gotta say, when you're on a streak,
well,
allowances must be
you
made.
know what? Yeah, yeah. And if you've got that time to kill, you're kind of nervous waiting for the wedding. Maybe going out and finding a geocache would be a little bit calming. Who knows?
Who knows?
But what we do know is that you can pop in your question for Cliff tonight. Use the hashtag road trip. I thought of other hashtags, but I think road trip, because that way we don't spoil the places he's going. Use that to bring up anything in the chat. And of course, use the hashtag FATAS, like I already see in the chat a couple of times. Thank you, Seabeck Tribe. If you want to bring up anything in the after show. So, with no further ado, let's jump right into this, Cliff. You wanted to talk about, okay, well, let's back up. The idea for this show, the genesis for the show, not that far, what's end?
Okay.
Just a little bit back up. The genesis for this show was actually in Flagstaff, right? The first event I went to in Flagstaff after I got there was at the bar. I can't remember the name of it. Incredible venue, fantastic venue. And you said, hey, I just did a trip to New Mexico and I need to talk about it. So I said, great, let's get you on the show. And here you are. And you know what, guys, if you have an idea, you said, I want to talk about this, let me know. You can send an email to feedback@cachingNW.com. You can call into 253-693-TFDC, or you can talk to me at any event. Or if you see me at Costco, or, tailgating me in traffic, let me know.
Pull up next to him on the freeway, write a note, throw it across into his open window.
Yeah, make it into an airplane.
Yeah.
Shoots right across there. Even at, 60, 70 miles an hour, I guarantee you'll throw it out your window.
Right. You can also write it into the dirt on the back of the trunk.
Yeah. One of the places I go on a regular basis has seagulls that have just hatched. Their hatchlings hatched. Kind of seems redundant. And normally it's okay. Today, they decided my car was the target. And they bombed it. So I've got to go get a car wash.
Yeah.
So you could write it on that if you were bold enough. I wouldn't.
I'll pass. Thank you. Yeah.
That's what sticks are for.
Oh, there you go.
Pocket knives.
You've got experience in this. So
It's all about the tot.
It is. There you go. I'm not even going to give people this suggestion. I had an idea and I thought, no, that's only going to get them in trouble. Okay. So Cliff, you went to New Mexico all on your own. Was this a planned trip? Did you go with 18,000 people, like a big mega event, or was it just you and your wife?
It was just me and the missus. So the genesis of this trip was because this was a place I'd never been before in my life, and neither had my wife ever been there.
Mm-hmm.
And we both like to travel, and there's lots of places we've never been, and New Mexico has always been high on the list because there's just a lot of things to see there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just like, okay, I have this long list of places I want to go see, and I kind of divided it up into A, B, and C places. And it's like, okay, all the A places they have to be, visited. And, some of them are, you want to go see because of, cultural stuff. And some of them you want to go see because of history. And some of them you want to go see because of geocaching, because, Gilby, North Dakota wouldn't make the list unless you're a geocacher, right?
That's exactly right.
But at the same time, there's reasons for us to go there, right? But there's lots of places that's like, okay, there's great geocaches, there's really interesting culture, there's lots of history, great scenery, sign me up. So anyway, that's why New Mexico was really high on the list. So that's where we went. So anyway, we visited there in April of this year, and that was the genesis of the trip. Just
okay,
a nice 2-week trip.
Nice. I can say now I've driven through New Mexico, right? Following old Route 66 when I came from Ohio out to California. And I know I stopped in Tucumcari just because it's so much fun to pronounce. Tucumcari just rolls off the tongue nicely.
Yeah. It's kind of like Puyallup
exactly.
Stuff like that. Yeah,
exactly. So, but that's about my extent of New Mexican. Is that the right way to say it? My travels through New Mexico, the New Mexican travels.
Sure.
I don't know what could go wrong. So, let's see. How did you get there? Where did you start this?
So we started
in New Mexico.
So when you have 2 weeks, what we did is we flew in by far and away the largest, city in New Mexico, and the biggest airport, the easiest one to connect into is in Albuquerque, right? So there are direct flights from Seattle to Albuquerque, and pretty much any major metropolitan area to Albuquerque, at least within the United States. I can't say that there are Canadian flights direct to Albuquerque, but any place that's a major metropolitan area in the U.S. will have a direct flight to Albuquerque, and so you can fly there, and so the flights are not expensive, and the idea was to say, okay, we'll fly in and out of Albuquerque, but that doesn't mean we're going to stay there, because the intention was to say, look, we want to do this as a road trip. We want to see the state, want to see what we can. So we rented a car, and then the idea would be to say, hey, look, we'll get, a VRBO or an Airbnb, and we'll stay here for 3 days and there for 4 days. And so we stayed, the first place we went to was in Santa Fe, and we stayed there for, I think, 4 days. And then we drove down later to Roswell and stayed there for a couple of nights. And then we stayed in Albuquerque for last little bit. So, and we just use those places as home bases. That wasn't necessarily the only things that we did was just stay in town. There's a lot of things to see that aren't in the city, right? So
sure.
Yeah, so,
well, let's start with Santa Fe. How was that? What was there to do? What was there to see there in Santa Fe?
Well, first off, the first thing to do is to understand that when you go to New Mexico, what you really need to do is eat and drink. And New Mexican cuisine is fabulous. And if you were to start with anything in New Mexico, the first thing that you understand is that New Mexico is famous for their chili cuisine. And you can get green chili and you can get red chili, or if you're just really undecided, you can order things with Christmas, which is red and green, right? So you can get them both. And so that is kind of the way of things. So you can get, whether you're getting burritos or enchiladas or what, you just get everything drenched in one or the other. And my favorite thing that I had my favorite meal by far was something that I had actually on my very first night when we drove up from Albuquerque to Santa Fe. We stopped at a little place that was kind of a bar that had been recommended to us by the guy that was actually the car rental agent. When he said, I was just going to go up I-25, he said, no, you don't want to do that. You're going to take this other route. It's only going to take you 15 extra minutes, but it's way better. And you need to stop at this place. We said, sure, why not? Because I had no other plans. So I was just trying to get to the Airbnb because it's just driving along. And I said, yeah, that sounds like good. So we stopped there. And he said, yeah, this place has won the green chili hamburger, best green chili hamburger in the state this year. Okay,
wow.
Sign me up.
They sold, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm in that, and so that was easily the best meal I had, and I think there you see the picture I took of it. And for those of you who are watching live on YouTube, or even delayed,
for those who are listening, there's a delicious burger and onion rings on the screen. In fact, I'm a big fan of onion rings, and those look really good.
Those look really good. I'm hungry now.
Yeah, and so I so love this thing that I couldn't finish it all because it was enormous, but I had to take the rest of it home with me because, I'm going to I guess it was VRBO that we were staying at that night. And so it's like, okay, I have a fridge. I can take the leftovers home, and it was good. And I so loved it that I have since then learned how to cook. I've found recipes about how to make green chili, and I haven't made green chili since yesterday. So green chili cheeseburgers are delicious, and this just it's changed my life. This is the way to cook hamburgers as far as I'm concerned.
I like that line. I haven't made it since yesterday.
Yeah, so it's delicious. So anyway, it's one of those things where you start. When you go to a place, you really need to sample the local cuisine, and green chili and red chili are delicious, but green chili was my favorite by far. So, and I did try Christmas style on a couple of things, but green chili cheeseburgers are where it's at. Also, you can have a fair number of different things to eat or drink. The state cocktail is actually called the Chimeo, which is tequila, apple cider, and creme de cassis. But I didn't really find one of those around. But the highest rated brewery in the state is called La Cumbre Brewing. It's in Albuquerque, according to Beer Advocate. But like is the case these days, there are excellent breweries all over the state. And so we sampled them in a number of different places. Shockingly, they were all good. I can also speak quite highly of the prickly pear margaritas. Those were very good. So there were some very, very interesting things that were, that you could try. But as always, when you go around, you definitely did try things. So, but
I think J-Car wants your recipe. He wants to know, did you do the green chilies on your Traeger?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. It's a Traeger recipe, Jim. So
there you go. Next on Cooking in the Northwest, we're going to.
Yeah. We'll go from podcast baking to podcast cooking. We'll get everybody there.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So the place we stayed in Santa Fe was a place called Old Town, and Old Town is the oldest part. So one of the things you have to understand about Santa Fe is it is the oldest. It is far older than most places in that are established on the East Coast. So it was actually founded in 1607. So you think about, the Pilgrims landing in 1620. So
yeah,
this is before that. This is like the same year that Jamestown was established. For settlers that hit Jamestown. So that was established in 1607. It was the regional capital in 1610, right? And so it's been established as a European settlement since then. And of course, the native Pueblo people were there already, and they're still there, and they're still around. They've been inhabiting this area for centuries, and they're still a huge part of the New Mexican culture. And so, there are many thousands and thousands of Native Americans that live there, and they're a big part of what the state represents and what they do.
That's fabulous.
And so they've embraced the cultures have intermingled, and it's provided a really interesting set of things that you can do and see. So there are some really good geocaches in that area. The first one that we went to is one called the SFGT La Fonda Hotel, which is right in kind of the downtown area of right off the old square, which is the main part of the old square there.
Mm-hmm.
It is it's SFGT number 1, and SFGT is a Santa Fe Tour Trail. And you may, or for those of you who were actually at Geo Woodstock this year, you may remember that they actually had a table there for advertising that. And the Santa Fe Geo Trail, or what is it? I forget. It's essentially a historical trail. It's what that is, and they've got a historical trail that goes from Santa Fe up to where they were driving cattle up into Kansas and some of those areas. And this is the start of that, right? And so this has got like 400 plus odd favorite points, and it's actually inside the hotel. You have to go and ask for the cache sort of thing, but it's a nice. It's an interesting place. They also have decent food there. We ate there at least once. Maybe twice, but it was kind of interesting to see. The second place that we went and saw, the second place that we went to was the Travel Bug Cafe. This is another really interesting place. It's called the Travel Bug Cafe, and they named it that without knowing about geocaching, which is a shock. Okay. So they just thought it was like, people who like to travel need to have, they have a travel bug, right? And shockingly, it lasted about 15 minutes before a geocacher ran into it and said, we got to make this into a virtual cache. So,
that's right.
So it is now like one of the highest favored virtual caches in the state. And so you have to go there, and the requirements, as you can see, for those of you who are watching live, there's a picture of me that I took there. The requirements for actually logging these caches, you have to go there in front of the store with a sign and actually have a trackable that you can have there that you get your picture taken with. So that's kind of be able to do there. So that's kind of a fun, neat little place.
GSM times 2 has been there, done that.
Yeah.
Did you buy the T-shirt? Well, I was talking more to GSM times 2 because been there, done that, bought the T-shirt.
Right.
Yeah, it's of course that goes back to the
glow.
to the glow, which is been there, done that, got the 50 T-shirts,
50
right?
T-shirts.
Yeah, because we're getting 50 souvenirs is the requirement for that challenge. The third one that the third cache kind of wanted to highlight that really was part of Santa Fe area was the historical tour of Santa Fe, and it's an adventure lab bonus. And this is one where it's not so much about, the actual cache is kind of right there by the downtown historical center. But what really is about is this was put out by some people called Fam2Go, who I met later at the event that we were at later in the trip. But what that was that there are so many interesting buildings around town that date from really old places and have some interesting history, and this takes you to all of those, and it's great to be able to do that. So some of the places that are locations that it takes you to are like the Palace of the Governors, which is the oldest public building and continuous that was built by Europeans in the entire United States. It was built in 1610, right? So you're actually going to a building in the United States that's from 1610. People in Europe might not think anything of that because there are lots of buildings from that age.
No, every other block has a building from the 1600s in Europe.
Yeah, but that's not true in this country, right? And those of us who live here in Washington or BC area, it's like our part of the world wasn't even settled for another 200 years, right?
Yeah, and here, if it's 25 years old, you tear it down and build a new stadium.
There you go. Anyway,
still sore about that, aren't you?
And one of the things that was kind of interesting about that is that I mentioned all the Native Americans that were around. The Palace of the Governors right now, during the week, there's a whole bunch of people who do Native American jewelry, and they actually come and sell their wares right there along the walkway of the Palace of the Governors, and so if you wanted some turquoise and silver and stuff like that, they do some really fabulous work. So. Then there's the oldest chapel, the oldest church in the United States is another one of the stops on that tour, on that Adventure Lab tour. It's the oldest church in the United States, and it was built in 1680, right? Wow. And that still stands. There was some damage done to it, and they had to rebuild parts of it, but it's still parts of it dates from the 1680s.
Oh, so new compared to the Palace of the Governor.
Right. Right. So that's pretty It's stuff like that that's really interesting to do for Adventure Labs. And the great thing about Adventure Labs, of course, is that they're relatively easy. You just have to go and find the appropriate information and answer the questions. But you get a interesting place to visit, and it's a find as well. And then there's a number of museums around town that are interesting. The Georgia O'Keeffe Museum is there in town, which has some really interesting artwork. Some of her favorite works, because she was born, I think, in New York, but she moved out to New Mexico. This is where so she's got a lot of her best work is in this museum, and so that's easily worth a couple of hours of just wandering around there if you're interested in art. And then if you're not maybe interested in stuff like what George O'Keeffe does, but you're interested in wild interactive experience museums, there is the Meow Wolf Museum, which is a interactive thing. Oh, there's a picture of my wife and I should say that one of the other things I should say about Albuquerque is it's at 7,000 feet of, so that's probably a little over 2,000 meters. I don't have the number right in my head.
18 million meters.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost the moon, right? So
yeah, exactly.
7,000 feet. And so we were here in mid-April and it's snowing, right? So that should give you an idea, right? Even though it's quite a bit farther south than where we're at here, but it's that high of elevation. And so we actually had some snow on that day. Just a little shower. It didn't stick around for very much long. But then there's the Meow Wolf Museum, which we went and saw. And this is an experiential museum where you wander around inside and it's like couple stories tall, and there's room after room of weird stuff inside, and you can touch everything, and you wander into different parts, and it's all kinds of weird psychedelic things. And the one rule they have is you're not allowed to do drugs, because you can imagine when you go into a place like this, there's a lot of people who thought, hey, I'd like to, no, don't do that, right? So
you don't need to. This is the same effect.
Exactly.
I'm going to go extend that to just don't do drugs anywhere. But.
Exactly. But I'm with you there, Jim. But it's just one of those things where it's just really cool, and you wander around inside to be able to do that. And then out in front of it, there's this giant spider. There's actually like 3 or 4 different giant sculptures. There's one of a couple of giant robots that are like 2 stories tall. There's a giant spider that would give Ron Weasley just the weebie-jeebies. So this thing's, it's like 25-foot tall sculpture with, and there's a picnic table underneath it. And so you could sit there and, you could
sit there.
Yeah, go ahead. Be my guest.
Not everybody can actually sit there. Some people would be freaked out. My wife, would have no part of it.
Yeah. And so you can eat your hamburgers there. Now, this was the day that was, the winds
chili
were,
burgers.
Yeah. It was the winds were about 40 miles an hour, and it was 35 degrees. So we didn't stay outside for very long. But
You'd have to have hot chili.
Yeah, there you go. But we did find the one cache that was right there near that spider. It wasn't right. It's not like touching the spider or anything, but it's actually just off the grounds of the museum because they didn't have permission.
I say, Cliff, I see a lamppost there. Is that where that you've got this great location and you do a lamppost hide?
It is not on the lamppost, nor is it on the picnic table. So, but yeah, it's there's a cache there. It's a GC-A1CWZ, and so we've made the find there because it's the sort of thing that's like, hey, it's another one of those things that gets a few favorite points, not because the hide's great, but because, hey, look, this is a really cool museum, and you can go do some fun things.
Nice. So, we'll stop here for a moment. Our resident Canadian says it's 2,133 meters.
That's
7,000 feet.
It's right up there.
There you go. And Komakino adds, drug or bad. Okay.
Okay.
There you go. So anyway, go ahead.
Oh, Komakino also says it's a nano somewhere on the spider, isn't it?
It's just, it's a nano on the top of the spider. You have to
25 feet in the air. You just got to shimmy up one of the legs.
Yeah.
What could go wrong?
Nothing. Seaback Tribe agrees with me. It's an LPC.
Yeah. It is not an LPC. It's not anywhere close to the lamppost.
Good.
So we spent a couple of days doing stuff in Santa Fe. Then we moved on to Los Alamos, right? Because as those of you who are from this area, particularly in the state of Washington, are well aware, Los Alamos has got some history associated with it, similar to the Tri-Cities. They're kind of tied together in some ways.
Yes.
But the Los Alamos project, of course, the Manhattan project was kind of really based there, and there is probably the biggest known cache in that area is called GCKRYP, but frankly, that was just a cache. It was the real things that are really good there are the adventure labs, because once again, the adventure labs take you to interesting places, and what you can do with the adventure labs is you can ask questions and take places that you can't place geocaches, right?
Exactly.
Right. And they ideally you'd like to think that somebody would start placing a couple of virtuals in places like that, but nobody had done so when I was there. Actually that was a bit of a point of contention with the New Mexico cachers, is they have not been giving a lot of virtuals from the latest thing. I think there are only 4 new virtuals in the state from the last round. So they were kind of disappointed by that. But I've talked to people and it's just like, hey, it's random draw. And it's not based on state, actually. Interesting. So it's just
it's based on country, right? And I know they weighted some of the smaller countries to for smaller cacher counts in those countries to help them.
Yep. So they just got unlucky, I guess. But anyway, Los Alamos is really interesting. They have several interesting museums there, and you can go in and see things like Nobel Prizes from people who've worked there and do a lot of tours of the science. One of my favorite things that I did there was one of the labs that was about the Manhattan Project and stuff like that was I found there was a little sign there that was talked about the one person who had actually seen all 3 of the explosions in 1945 was a fellow by the name of Larry Johnson. Larry Johnson was the guy who actually held a patent on the detonating device for the Trinity explosion. And he saw the Trinity explosion. And then he later was a person who was trying to figure out how much the actual size of the explosions were. So he had done a lot of work on trying to how to measure using the pressure sound blasts and things like that, how big the actual explosions were. So he was in the trail planes for the other 2 explosions, just to try and measure how big the explosions were in 1945. And following the Manhattan Project, he obviously got out of that. He was a professor of physics, and he then later moved to the Northwest, where he was a professor of physics at the University of Idaho, where I took electricity and magnetism from him back in the 1980s. So he's a guy who I actually knew. Wow. And I found that really interesting. So
that is amazing. So you took a course on magnetism. That's why you're so attractive.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Just had to throw that out there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Let's back up for a minute. You're talking about Trinity and Manhattan Project and Los Alamos. All of this is related to the creation of the atomic bombs in World War II.
Yes.
So the Manhattan Project was the project to create the bombs. Trinity was, what was Trinity? Was Trinity the blast site?
Trinity was the test explosion that happened out at White Sands, which was like 150 miles away. It's not actually at Los Alamos. It was way out in the desert. It was actually well south of Albuquerque. It's quite a ways south away, but that was the test explosion. When they were doing that.
And you rightly said that Los Alamos is connected with Hanford because they both. Let's see. Los Alamos did uranium, and Hanford refined plutonium.
Plutonium, yeah.
For the bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yeah, and actually, I think the uranium was done at Oak Ridge, but the place where they did all the design work was at Los Alamos. So
that's right.
That's where
which is Spanish for the Alamos.
Thank you. You are so international.
Yeah, and it's just really pretty country too. That's the other thing. And the other thing about it wasn't just the science museums, because of course, there's all these people are really famous, and we've been recently treated to the movie Oppenheimer. And so the reason they picked that site was that there were actually interesting buildings. There was actually a school there that was for a school boy for boys that was out there. And there's General Groves. And actually the picture that you flashed up there on the screen, that's Oppenheimer and General Groves and statues. And that's some of the buildings that dated from before they got there. And that's why they picked that site, is that those buildings were in place and they could actually make use of them already. They didn't have to start from scratch. So that was it was interesting to go see why they picked that site to be able to do that. They didn't have to start from scratch. It was part of the reason they picked that site, and as well as the fact it was off in the middle of nowhere.
Can you imagine trying to do that today? Yeah. I often think of this with Hanford, right? Hanford was a small town already established.
Right.
And because there was a crook in the river right there, a bend in the river, they thought this is a perfect spot to build a nuclear reactor to help refine the plutonium, because we've got great access to the river for water, for cooling. And so they displaced the entire town of Hanford and said, here, we will give you land and a house in Richland. Thank you very much.
And they did pretty much exactly the same thing at Los Alamos as well, right? And in fact, actually, I there's a picture I know I threw in the notes for you, but it's not that it's interesting. There's no way anybody could read it, but it's actually the letter signed by the president saying, "We would like you to move."
Okay, that's what that is. Okay,
yeah. So so when Franklin Roosevelt says, "Yeah, we'd like you to move," you move. So be able to do that.
I just look at that and go, I don't think people today would do it.
Yeah.
No, you can't kick me out of my house.
Right.
I'll sue. And it'd take years, and if at all, to get people to move out of a single house.
So yeah, it was an interesting place. The other thing that was kind of interesting is that they actually have the house that Oppenheimer lived in, and it was lived in by other people after he left, and obviously he's been dead for a number of years. But that house was finally the last person who lived in it died in like 2022, and they turned that over to the Historical Society, and they're in the process of renovating it. And they generally have not really let people in it yet. But the day that we happened to visit, there was only like 3 of us on the tour that we were doing for this historical tour that we were walking on. And she said, "You know what? There's nobody else around. I have the keys. We're going to go inside."
Cool.
And so we were able to go inside and take a look at some of the stuff that's inside. And that's all period furniture. But it's not original to Oppenheimer. It's actually original to the movie, right? They actually filmed the movie in here. And they left all of the furniture for the Historical Society to use. So it's not original to him, because of course that stuff is long gone, but it is period pieces. And
that's great.
It was a lot of fun. And so someday in a couple of years, when they've actually finished up, because they have to work on supporting the floor, there's a couple of places where they don't want you to step because hey, we don't want anybody to fall through and stuff like that. But the rest of the house is otherwise in pretty good shape, and it's just astounding to be able to do that. To be able to do that.
Cliff, are you saying they were worried about fallout?
Yeah, or fallout that's a good one. Yeah.
Sorry, it was right there. I had to do it.
Okay, so anyway, I'll move along there. We another place. We went to a couple other places besides Los Alamos in that area. We went to Bandelier National Monument, which is and another Native American site. It's a Native American ruins and cliff dwellings. And this is another one of those places that just is crying out for virtuals and an earth cache. There's actually one earth cache which we didn't do because it was a hike that we couldn't really do. But this is a Native American spot where Native Americans lived here until like the 1500s. And it's not like they died out. They just said, you know what? There's no water here. We should move down to the Rio Grande Valley where there's water. So they just moved like 50 miles away where they could actually farm for a living instead of trying to do the dry land farming up here. And they just abandoned the place. So all those people are still around, or at least their descendants are still around. It's just, they just left this place because, it's hard to live up here. But you can actually wander around. You can actually climb into the places where they used to live. They even still have some wooden step ladders where you can climb in. So it's actually quite interesting to be able to do that. And also nearby is the Valles Caldera, which is a volcano that's up at 8,300 feet. And Valles Caldera is, it's similar to those of you who were in Albuquerque, or not in Albuquerque, but in Flagstaff. There's a lot of volcanic activity historically around this area as well. And the Valles Caldera is an actual super volcano. And so when it went boom, some like 1.5 million years ago, it made a huge giant explosion, but it made a caldera that was, I don't know, 25 miles across, kind of like thick Yellowstone size eruption. And you can go hiking in the caldera. Now at 8,300 feet, it's still got snow on it in April. But the floor of it's got, a ton of grass, and, this time of the year, it would be just a gorgeous place to hike. I know that there are a lot of elk and the like that are there. The only thing that we saw about 1 million prairie dogs. They're all over the place. There are holes everywhere where they live. And there's one picture you can see there that I could zoomed in on one. You don't want to go petting them because they've been known to carry the plague, but they're around. Just don't let the fleas on you.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that we were able to see was a number of coyotes. Right. They didn't get close, but you could see them off in the distance as they were running, because it's it's a big open grassland to be able to do that. But that was really fun to be up there to be able to do that. That was and so we did a nice earth cache up there. And
I love your nonchalance with the plague. Oh, yeah, they have the plague, so just don't touch them. You'll be fine.
You'll be fine.
Yeah, well,
we're talking the plague.
Yeah, well, the fleas don't jump across. Besides, it's April. Right? It's not running around. So anyway,
I have to interrupt. It still blows my mind that there's snow in New Mexico. I picture New Mexico as desert, dry, hot, right? Now, I realize you were at 8,300 feet. That, the air thins out. It gets quite cool and cold, I should say.
Yeah. So the earth cache that's up there that we did was GC1GDMA, and that was it's an easy earth cache, but it was still informative up there to be able to get that into that area. And then from there, we left the whole, Los Alamos area, and we toured down to Roswell.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, you might want to go ahead and jump in to say what Kitty Quest had to say there.
Kitty Quest apparently has been to your house. She's been to the cliff dwellings.
That's right.
She didn't say hi.
Oh. Maybe she meant the ones in New Mexico.
Oh, okay. Yeah, those are really interesting. And so we left that area and we went down to Roswell. Roswell is one of those places where there are aliens everywhere. It's also the home of rocketry, because Robert Goddard actually is from Roswell.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And so there are a couple of really interesting spots in that area. And there's the thing about Roswell that I loved is that they just own the whole alien thing. Mm-hmm. There are 2 caches of real interest there that have tons and tons of favorite points, as Chris is kind of scrolling through some of the pictures that we took while we were in town. They have really interesting spots at McDonald's, which is shaped like a UFO.
Yeah.
And, the Dunkin' Donuts sign is being held up by by an alien, because,
of course,
muscular.
Yeah. The town just owns their history. Right. But the cache that is probably, I think if it's not the most favorite cache in the state, is close, and that's the virtual cache GC5813. So it's also from 2003. It's really old, right? So it's an original virtual, and that one's called Ralph, RALF, and it's actually inside the International UFO Museum, and you have to go inside to actually answer the question to be able to do that. But, if you're in Roswell, that's, of course, what you want to do.
Oh, yeah.
And then, so there's a picture of inside. And I have to say that for a long time, that picture that Chris is showing there, that was my background on Teams at work. So,
well, for those that are listening only, inside the UFO museum, alien museum.
Yes. International UFO Museum.
Thank you. I know you said it. I know I heard it, but it didn't stick. There's an iconic picture of like half a flying saucer with 4 aliens underneath it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the picture that, or the diorama that everybody gets their picture taken with.
Yeah. And then the other one that was kind of interesting, that's not that isn't so much UFO related, but is actually really honestly rocketry related, is for the Goddard stop, and that's another virtual. It's GC88 Zulu 17. So that's just kind of another big giant sculpture on the edge of town that's shows him doing some experiments, and they have a big history museum there in town, which we didn't have time to go into that one. To be able to do that. But Roswell's, I really kind of enjoyed that town because it's one of those towns that just owns their history. I'm one of those people who don't believe in aliens, but I do believe in kitsch, and they own their kitsch.
There you go. Yes.
Yeah.
So be able to do that.
Pre-show, you compared it a bit to Leavenworth.
Yeah.
Here in the Northwest, there's a town in the mountains in Leavenworth that, it goes into the German heritage, right? So it's great at Christmas. You get this kind of German themed town. Wits End, you've been there far more often than I have.
Big Oktoberfest celebrations for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Bavaria, cookie cutter.
There you go. Thank you.
Gingerbread architecture. A lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, Roswell does the same thing except for with aliens, right? So
pretty much the same as Leavenworth. In
Yeah.
Germans. Yeah.
The Germans, unless if they got their resident card, right?
Yeah. One of the other things, I was going to say, one of the other things is that we've got this Cosmic Quest thing going on.
Yes.
And the actual place where the actual crash site happened, they put a monument there, and they tried to. Somebody's actually stolen the monument because, of course, that's what idiots do.
Or the aliens came back to take it.
Oh,
thank you for the gift.
But since it was a monument, there's actually a place where you can. Somebody actually then, of course, had to put a geocache there because, of course, that's what we do.
Right.
And so there's actually a geocache at the actual Roswell crash landing site. And I tried to get to it, and you may notice there's snow there too.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you who are looking at the live feed, that was the last day we saw snow, but that was somewhere around 5,000 feet of altitude as we were heading down towards Roswell, and we just couldn't get any closer because it was snow a little bit and a lot of rain, and it got very muddy. And at some point, you're saying, I've got a rental car, and I really don't need to wreck this thing.
Yeah.
So somewhere in that general direction, maybe a half mile to a mile away, is where the actual crash site is, but I couldn't get any closer to it before. It's like, we have a problem. That's
the whole point of the rental car.
Yeah.
It's not yours. Go ahead. Take it where you wouldn't take your car.
Yeah. I was sliding around pretty bad.
if you get stuck, it's a long time and an awkward phone call to say, hey, I got your car stuck.
Well, except the only thing I could say is that there was a lot of other cars that had out-of-state license plates that were going down that road for no other reason. There's only one reason to go out that way.
Snow.
It's there you go. Yeah. The last stop we did in that general direction was at Carlsbad Caverns, and this is easily, I think, our favorite stop of the entire trip. Carlsbad Caverns is one of those places where I'd never been there. Certainly, I think I'd heard of it many times, but didn't really know what to expect of it. And Carlsbad Caverns is a place which is really, it's only one cavern, right? So Carlsbad Cavern, it should be just Carlsbad Cavern. There's only one of them, and it's a one room, and it's about a mile long. You think of a cave, you don't think of you think of places like where you have to just kind of just squeeze into it and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This is one cave that's like a mile long. Most of the time it's like 100 yards across and 200 feet high. And I mean, there's times where it gets some of the stalactites and stalagmites and columns have formed together. So it's kind of, there's a little bit of separation between one place and the next, but it just goes on and on and on. And so you kind of wander up on this trail for like 3/4 of a mile on one side and then 3/4 of a mile back on the other side. And the only reason it doesn't go farther is because that was the point where actually the floor collapsed, because there is actually, I say there's only one cave. It's actually multiple layers, and the layer there collapsed into the layer below that. But it goes on and on and on. It's just immense to be able to do that. And, that's just stunningly pretty. And it took me a while to really kind of come to grips with how to take pictures in low light. And that picture that is up on the display now is actually my favorite. That's a picture of my wife. But that's probably a picture that you can see back into like 300 yards, or, maybe
it's got to be that far or more.
Yeah. So it's just immensely long distance, but it took a long time for me to figure out how to take those low light pictures using my cell phone. But there are settings using night vision and how to do that correctly that worked out quite well. And it's actually much easier to do on your cell phone if you do that than it is for people who are trying to take. I saw a lot of people who are like, "Hey, I'm going to carry this $1,500 camera with flash," and it's like, yeah, that's not going to work.
So, now that'll highlight the subject, but it's not going to throw enough light farther back to see anything back there.
Yep, pretty much. So it was a lot of fun. It was beautiful, beautiful place.
Now I grew up in the Midwest, and we didn't go to Carlsbad, but we went to Mammoth Cave, which is very much like this. One large, huge room with stalactites, stalagmites touching. It's fantastic to see.
Yeah. So it's just, I was very happy to see that place. I'm wearing the same shirt that day as I'm wearing right now. How about that?
Oh, I wouldn't have known. That one looks tan. The one you're wearing is gray.
Right. Oh, there you
go.
The color.
Cave lighting is different.
Yeah. The color tone's different. Color white balance.
One of those things is, done by soft lighting in the middle of a dark cave, and the other is just by the overhead lighting here. So, but yeah. And then we went to Albuquerque, and Albuquerque is another town that has an old town, which is also kind of where we stayed in the VRBO there. And it's got some really interesting caches that are kind of worth highlighting. There's G6FV, which is Our Lady of the Tree. I didn't put a picture in of the actual tree, but it's very close to this church that you see there. And it's a place where somebody had kind of carved in a statue of the Virgin Mary into a tree that had grown up around it. So you can think of, for those of you who live in the Seattle area, you probably may be familiar with the bicycle cache out on bicycle tree out on Vashon Island. Similar thing. So it's where it's been absorbed into that.
The naturally occurring bicycle tree.
Yeah. And then there's the Old Town Ghost Tour, which is another one of these things where they take you around to all the places around town that are supposedly haunted. And there's quite a few of them. That's GCF264. And it's another Adventure Lab type of thing. Well, actually, I take that. That is not Adventure Lab. That one is a multi-cache, yeah. And then there's the GC913QD, which is the Albuquerque Old Town Tour bonus cache, puzzle cache. That was the one I was thinking of. That's Adventure Lab. It's again very similar to the one which we did in Santa Fe, where you go around to all the interesting places. You get an Adventure Lab stop, find at each, and then there's a bonus at the end. To be able to do that. And then there's also GC2D RTA, which is another interesting spot, which that's the one at the it's called Transplanted Tracks. It's a one at the History Museum, Natural History Museum, because they've done a lot of work with dinosaurs out there, and so they have a big dinosaur sculpture out front. The dinosaur stuff inside is also quite good, but so we actually did the tour inside, and that was kind of fun. But they have an actual earth cache out in front that's related to that. That was kind of fun. And then just on the outside of town, they have the Petroglyph National Monument, which is the kind of the it was just it's a fairly recent national monument. It was actually made in like 1988. So it's a very recent national monument, but this is a area just on the edge of Albuquerque that is literally, like I said, the parking for the trailhead that we stopped at is like, if you turn around, you look at this gas station car wash combo that's right in a suburb there. And then you hike out on the trail. There's like 25,000 petroglyphs that are there. And the way these are formed is because, somebody's kind of chiseled away the dark patina off the rock. And over time, the elements will kind of, make that patina reform again. So they only last for about 2,000 years. It doesn't mean that there weren't ones from before that, but that's the oldest ones they could find. And those are hard to mic out. The ones that are easy to find are the ones that are around that are from the 1200s or 1500s, because those are still easier enough to see.
500 years old or so.
And the one you carved yourself, right?
Yeah. And interestingly, they actually have them. They found some of them from the initial Spanish settlers that settled in the in the early 1600s and stuff like that. So,
I see the symbol for pie there. So somebody was baking.
Yeah, exactly. Pie, and there's a lot of cucinas in there too. Okay, and then kind of our last stop that we did there was the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center, which is the other place that I had really, really good food. The Pueblo Indian culture is truly tremendous. They did a lot of dancing. We happened to be there on a day where they did dances. They don't do that every day. We just happened to hit one where the one of the Pueblos was down to do some dancings for us tourists, and they did some really fun dances. That was kind of fun to watch. And we just did some tours around there, and it was really kind of fun and to wander around in there. And then we ate, because they have a kitchen where they cook Native American cuisine there. And that was perhaps the best steak sandwich I've ever had in my life. It was really good. It was fabulous. They had Indian fry bread on a Philly cheesesteak type thing.
Wow.
But it was Indian fry bread rather than just a roll. And I was like, oh, this is delicious. I must eat this again and again and again. So that was good. And then kind of our last stop that we did on that same night, we had reached out to some of the local geocachers to say, hey, I'd love to love to have an event to meet some of you folks to do that, but I have no idea where to do that. And they offered to host one for us. And so they hosted one just to meet us, and they obviously knew each other already, but it was great to meet them. And so we got a chance to sit down and talk with some of the local geocachers, SciY, Fam2Go, Sandpig, and a bunch of other folks that had showed up. And that was kind of fun. And then because I got a chance to meet them and talk to them, then, a couple months later when I ran into them at Geo Woodstock, it's like we got a chance to reconnect again. And that's
nice.
One of the great things about this kind of thing is you meet people and you get a chance to reconnect just a couple months later. It's like, hey, I got friends. And
that's very cool.
We're meeting them again somewhere. So
You got friends in southerly places.
there you go.
Should write a song. Kitty Quest tossed out that Acoma Pueblo is the oldest continually occupied community in North America since 1150 AD.
Yep.
And in case you want to know, Acoma looks like Tacoma without a T.
Right.
Is 50 miles west of Albuquerque.
Yeah, and I want to say there's something like 25 official pueblos that are recognized there, and I could be wrong about that, but it's a big part of the community, and it was really interesting to get to know more of the culture.
Fantastic. Cliff, thank you so much. This was an incredible trip you took. Yeah. You packed a lot in there. How long were you again? Was it 6-8 weeks? Because that seems like the sites you would see in that period.
I think it was April 4th through 14th. This is all just one of those things where you just go do a little bit here, a little bit there, and then just keep going a little bit more the next day, and wash clothes when you get home.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and you still got things you want to go back and see some other time.
Yeah, I mean, there's things like White Sands National Park we didn't get to see. We didn't get to go to Taos. Yeah. There's things that would do, and lots of stuff we didn't get to see, even the places we visited. But I did get a chance to feel like we saw a good chunk of the things that I wanted to see, and just had a really good time. Can't recommend going back to enough. It was a lot of fun, and I think pretty much everybody would enjoy doing that. The other thing that is kind of a fun little bit that would be down there for things that I hadn't mentioned before. There's also a Cactus Fizzy Trail Geo to Art, which has actually got 10 real fizzy loops that are real out in the desert. And when I say real, I mean there's not fake DT combinations. If it says it's a 5.5, it's a real 5.5, including there's one of only two 5.5 large where it goes in the United States that's out there. And the people who've actually finished that one takes about 3 to 4 weeks if you camp out in the desert to finish.
Wow.
Well, you said 10 times fizzy.
Yeah. It's like
you can do your fizzy challenge 10 times on the single challenge
like
trail,
yep.
right? Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Bryling says, fizzy cactus sounds like a drink.
No, that would be the prickly pear margarita.
Oh,
also
Seaback Tribe and both Kitty Quest says sounds like a fabulous trip.
Yeah, it was really good time.
Sorry, Kitty Quest. I said it at regular volume, so it doesn't count.
Right.
Once again, Cliff, thank you for joining us tonight. This was fabulous. Now I want to go to New Mexico, but
Indeed.
I'm out of vacation time. So maybe next year we'll have to head down that way.
Yeah.
And
I'd say do it in April or maybe like October. Because in the winter, there's a lot more snow.
Yeah, bring a jacket.
During the summer, you're going to get, the hot temperatures, and during the winter, it's going to be quite cold. So it's shoulder season's your best bet.
There you go. And it's probably lower attendance during that time too.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode of Caching in the Northwest. We hope you enjoyed it because I sure did.
Absolutely. And of course, we want to take a moment to thank Land Sharks and Gold Country Geotourism, our corporate Denali level sponsors. Landsharks.ca is the outdoor adventure and geocaching store. Check them out online, and they ship online orders daily. And for absolutely amazing geocaching adventures, check out exploregoldcountry.com. Let's see. We also want to thank our faithful Denali level supporters, Land Sharks, Gold Country Geotourism, Cool Cow Cachers, Cachely, the geocaching app, and Hawaiian Maile. If you want to know more about supporting the show, click the Patreon link on the cachingnw.com website.
Like GeoBirder did.
And Boomer365.
Trexer.
BC Rock Crawler.
Flagman.
Gas Station Tuna.
Seaback Tribe.
You Talks to Rocks.
Team Noltex.
Genies.
M-Nerve.
Segehov.
Mountain Bike.
Peach of Washington.
Green Words.
Logwork.
Skyhawker.
Nervous Energies.
GSM ×2.
Subway Mark.
Dora Moore.
UDAC.
LG 9000.
The Camp Clan.
B Pendragon.
J-Car.
Just Finding Our Way.
Kid Vegas 19.
Ackerdoc.
Just Carlo.
Terrible Tease.
Limax.
Geocaches.
MC3 Cats.
Wet Coaster.
Railroad.
Whidbey Island Gal.
Kitty Quest.
Butterfly Girl.
Antaeus.
GeoNav Pro.
And this guy we like to call CRS98.
This guy right here. Thank you all so much. CRS98, if listeners wanted to get a hold of you and ask you for some New Mexico travel tips, what's the best way to do that?
Probably the best way is just to reach out to me through a geocaching message service. I'm pretty good at responding that way. So
nice. Folks, thanks for taking the time to listen to this episode of Caching in the Northwest. Your support helps keep the quality shows coming. So if you like the show, please click the Patreon link on the cachingnw.com website. And if you didn't like the show, let us know what you want to talk about. But if you like the vibe, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a review. Because if you were in a restaurant, you would tip. If you were in a live audience, you would clap. But since you're on a podcast, leave us a free, fast, fabulous, fantastic 5-star review. And it really does help the channel to get promoted through all the algorithms. You can also call into 253-693-TFTC and leave us a comment, ask a question, or help us discover aliens any time of the day or night. And of course, you can email us at feedback@cachingnw.com. Join us every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Pacific for a live show and chat. The show is produced by Chris Umfenauer, Jim Paulwitz, Jay Kennedy, and Brian Lang. It's licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license. Copyright 2024 by Chris Umfenauer. And folks, I ask you to stay tuned for
The After Show.
Nice. We do have some FATAS, just a couple. Seebeck Tribe went on a huge road trip. Road trip stats, 23 days, 432 caches, including 80 Adventure Labs, 38 challenges qualified, 11 challenges signed. So many great memories, plus seeing the beautiful country.
That's an epic road trip right there.
Yes, it is.
That might be 2 episodes.
That's right. She says, she's talking to you, CRS98. You mean I'm not supposed to put a car out of commission like I did rental number 2 out of 3 cars on my trip?
It gets a little more expensive if you do that.
Yeah.
They tend to frown on that.
Well, you know, I've had rental cars break down. I've been hit in a rental car, you know, different things. You just, now we got to take a day, go turn the rental car in, go get another one.
Continuing with Seebeck Tribe, she also says, while at the oldest cache in Oklahoma, one of the 3 ladies who showed up just as we signed the log said, we introduced ourselves, and when they got to me, one of the ladies said, I know you.
Oh.
From listening to Caching the Northwest and another podcast.
Well, look at that. See? You listen to podcasts and people know you. Wow. People in Oklahoma are listening to Caching in the Northwest.
How about that?
Yeah. And then Caching in the Northwest is talking about the Southwest. So it doesn't really matter where you are. This is a podcast for you. GSM times 2 wants to know, did you do historic Route 66 Adventure Labs while in New Mexico?
Yes, I did some of them. I didn't do nearly as many as I did when I was in Arizona, but I did do some around the Santa Fe area, and that's where I had more time to do them. There's certainly ones that go right through the middle of Old Town Santa Fe, and so we did, I think, one of the whole series through there. The ones that really went out of town, we didn't have time to do all those. So,
right. Those are hard to squeeze in, aren't they?
Yeah, when we had kind of an agenda, as opposed to when we were in Flagstaff, where my agenda was maybe not as ambitious as GSM times 2's of finding all of them, but I did try and go out to the east and also out to the west and found quite a few of them. So
okay,
a couple of the pins on my want to go to New Mexico someday. There is a town of Las Vegas, New Mexico.
There is.
Doesn't have anything to do with gambling, as far as I know, but it is where they filmed the fictional sheriff's office of fictional Absaroka County, Wyoming, for the show Longmire. And I binge watched that a few years ago, and it looks like a nice town. There's also Walt Longmire's cabin is there in New Mexico in one of the parks.
When I was talking about going down through this area with my dad, who is a Wyoming native and used to live in that area, or not in New Mexico, but lived in Wyoming, and he would commute down to his winter place in Arizona at the time. He actually mentioned Las Vegas, New Mexico as a place he enjoyed. So
yeah, it's on my list of, if I ever get down that area, I'll have to stop looking. I'm told there's still a door that says Absaroka County Sheriff's Office.
Nice.
In the town square there.
Kind of like Roslyn, Washington, where it was supposed to be Sicily, Alaska.
Yeah.
And speaking of Alaska, how do you like that transition? Bryling just added Alaska and the Yukon to his geocaching regions visited maps.
Welcome home.
You have to refer to it as the Yukon, but not the Alaska, right?
Is that where Yukon Cornelius is from?
Yukon say that.
Okay, I did.
Is that where they grow Yukon Gold potatoes? That's what I want to know.
Oh, because those are good, really good potatoes. And Seaback Tribe added 8 new states on this trip. Wow, that's impressive. She got and just 8 on this trip, 11 for the year total.
Wow.
Yeah, she is getting around. Well, folks, thank you so much for joining us. And until next week, get out and get caching in the Northwest.